What's up, guys and gals, and welcome back to another Division 2 build video. If you happen to be new to the channel, then ground and pound that like and subscribe button, and don't forget to turn on post notifications, that way you know each and every time a stream goes live or a video is uploaded. All you have to do is reach up there and trigger that bell. But it has been requested on multiple occasions throughout the comment sections of my other videos because I do not have an SMG build on my channel, and I was asked more or less my interpretation and how I would actually play a full-out SMG build. Well, I'm here to answer those questions and to show you what I actually come up with and show you what I actually prefer and how I would run an SMG build. So let's hop right into it, shall we? So we'll go over the gear first, and then we'll go over the weapons, but basically the weapons is dependent on your personal preference as far as what particular SMG or LMG that you prefer, or you can just run double SMG. Like if you want to run an SMG and then have a secondary as your, such as the Chatterbox, then by all means, play it as you see fit and to your personal preference and your playstyle, right? So let's hop into the mask first. It is the Sokolov Concern mask. For one piece, you get 10% SMG damage, and the attributes are as followed: 11% damage to elites, 12,693 health, and 142 skill power. And we are utilizing insulated plus 10% hazard protection. Now, if you prefer the likes of Spotter, because you absolutely have the Legos to have Spotter unlocked and able to use, then by all means you can use it instead of the hazard protection. Because we are at 3, 13, and 7 with 361k armor and almost 87.5k health. So you're definitely an absolute tank, bullet sponge, whatever your terminology you would prefer to use. But moving on to our backpack. It is a Gilligard backpack, and for having 3 pieces like we do, we get 5% total armor, 20% hazard protection, and then 15% pulse skill power, thus the reason why I referenced the spotter on the mask previously. On the attributes, 12,610 armor, 6% cooldown reduction, and then 4.5% weapon damage. The talents we are utilizing on the ropes: weapon damage is increased by 25% while all skills are on cooldown. And of course we have hardened for an additional 10% armor. And the mod slots are as followed. Both are defensive and a utility. One is just a filler by way of utility, so that way we have on the ropes unlocked and able to use at 99 skill power. And then of course a defensive system mending mod at 6620 armor, 2% total armor, and then a 6% health regen. Now moving on to the gloves. It is the Gila gloves. The attributes are 12% hazard protection, so sorry about that, and then of course 12% SMG damage. On the talents we are utilizing compensated. Weapon damage is increased by 15% when your critical hit chance is below 20%, and ours is right and meet those requirements. Also 3 or less offensive Legos, and we have 3 exactly. So basically and essentially in this one particular piece we get 27% weapon damage. Then we have a utilities mod slot with 173 skill power, 2% headshot kill XP, and then 1.5% explosive damage. Now moving on to the knee pads. The knee pads, if you prefer the likes of Patience in the talent slot, then by all means utilize it, but in this case we are using self-adjusting, which gives you plus 20% armor regeneration. Our attributes are 11% total armor, and then the mod slots are as followed: 8663 health, 2% extra incoming healing, 4% skill health, 5655 armor, 445 armor regeneration, and then 2.5% total armor. Moving on to the chest piece. It is the Gila chest piece. On the attributes we get 16% total armor, 219 skill power, 25,732 additional armor, and then we are utilizing Unbreakable. 70% of your max armor is repaired when your armor is depleted. Armor kits used within the next 7 seconds are not consumed. Requires 11 or more defensive Legos, and we have 13. And no other active talents affecting armor kits. So if you have, say, Efficient on your backpack, then Unbreakable wouldn't be unlocked. So be sure that to not use any other talents that directly affect armor kits. Now in the mod slots are as followed: 8445 health, 4% skill health, 9% health regen. Utility, we had 125 skill power, 2% increased disrupt duration, and 3% reload speed. And then of course in the other defensive mod we have 5107 armor, and then 3% total armor, and then 1619 armor on a kill. Now on to the holster. It is a Petrov holster. For having one piece you get 10% LMG damage, and the attributes 260 skill power, 30,625 health, and then 10,178 health on a kill. Now, like I was stating earlier, if you wanted to run double SMGs, then you can basically take off this Petrov and throw in anything that's going to meet the requirements to still have on the ropes unlocked. So if you want to throw on something with devastating to get a little additional damage, such as I can do that right here, and see my armor actually goes up, and then my health drops just ever so slightly, but I'm still super duper tanky, right? And then you just get that extra additional 5% weapon damage. So it just all depends on how you want and how you prefer to play it. Now if you're going with the double SMGs, then this is how you would want to set it up. But if you wanted a different secondary and you like LMGs, but you wanted something more up close and personal like for those rushers and things of that nature, then by all means then you can go with the LMG SMG combo as I do. Also, instead of patience on your knee pads, you can go with the talent cloaked. But unfortunately with cloaked you wouldn't be able to use on the ropes, because cloaked requires 5 or less utility Legos, and on the ropes it takes 7. So therefore you would have to do a little bit of adjusting. But if you don't want to run on the ropes, and let's say you wanted to go with safeguard, since safeguard requires 4 or less offensive Legos, then that would kind of synergize along the lines with compensated. And also safeguard would kind of coexist and synergize with unbreakable, and I'll show you why. Safeguard is killing a target grants a 100% bonus to repairing and healing effects. And then Unbreakable directly correlates with that, because 70% of your max armor is repaired. Keyword repaired. So if you want to give up on a little bit of DPS and damage for, say, a tons more survivability, so basically when you proc Unbreakable and also have Safeguard procced as well, then you're going to basically get all your, well not basically, you are definitely going to get all your armor back. And 70% of that 370k armor is well over 260k armor back. So yeah, definitely you're going to be full up armored when both of those are procced at the same time. But I opted in, since my armor pool is so high, just to utilize Unbreakable with the additional DPS. So we're going to hop over to the firing range and show you the weapons that I'll be utilizing. So we'll see you guys over there in just a moment. Also, alright, we're here at the firing range, and first we're going to start out with the SMG 9, 18.6k base, 908 RPM, with Optimist and Allegro and Protected Deploy. While equipped, this weapon grants 10% bonus armor while deploying a skill, and 10% of 370k is 37k. So you get 37k armor just for deploying a skill. So what necessarily that means and translate to, since I am utilizing on the ropes, such as when both skills are on cooldown, when I drop my chem launcher pool at my feet, then each time I do that, I'm more or less deploying a skill, and in turn getting a brief moment of that additional 37k armor. So that puts me well over 400k armor just for using, or in this case deploying, any skill in particular. So let's shoot some cardboard, shall we? It's on veteran. As you can see, it definitely eats through a veteran. I'm not utilizing, the elite or named cardboard cutouts, because that would inflate the DPS, since I do have damage to elites. Even that 11% would definitely reflect on my damage and my DPS. So therefore I chose just to opt for the purples, and as you can see, it completely shreds through them, and my bullets are an average of 21,591 base damage. So definitely a lot higher than what it says actually on my character sheet, because it actually states that when you look at the weapon, it's 18.6, but then it translates over to 21,591, in actuality. Now moving on, if you prefer, let's say the T821 Black Market at 26k base damage, also with Optimist and Allegro. And then of course on this we have Cannon. While equipped, this weapon increases throwing distance by 10%, which is if you are more or less playing such as a grenader role and utilizing the demolitionist grenades, then by all means this can actually come in handy for those players or NPCs that are actually out of range or further off and you don't necessarily want to leave your cover. Then you can also utilize this to get that little extra distance when throwing a grenade. But you know, if you prefer other SMGs such as, you know, a Vector or an MPX, which is, I believe I have one right here also with Optimist and Allegro, so it's basically just personal preference. But the T821, even that's a little distancy there, as you can see, it still definitely hits super hard at 29.8k, and up close and personal like 31k, and of course the DPS goes higher. Now if you want the likes of, say, the MPX, I'll go ahead and switch over to it. And keep in mind, when Optimist, the reason why my damage is going up as I shoot, if you notice, my damage meter actually is fluctuating, and that's because every 10% ammo that leaves the magazine because of Optimist, it actually gains plus 3% weapon damage. So since I have 52 rounds, essentially every 5 bullets, I'm gaining 3% weapon damage. So that correlates by the end of my magazine, 18.4, 18.7, 18.8, and you kind of get the gist of it, correct? So let's go over the character sheet. Starting out with the SMG 9. 20,261, and the reason why it's 2,261, as you can see that once you click on and actually show the weapon at the beginning, it was actually on 18, but that doesn't necessarily correlate and take into consideration things along the lines of compensated. So I mean, it's good to more or less check both as far as what it says on the actual weapon itself and then actually your character sheet, because you can fluctuate your damage numbers you know, by switching things in and out. But if you actually want to know what it's actually going to be hitting for and not just take the game's word for it, such as what it says on your character sheet, then come down to the firing range and just fire up a couple rounds, and it'll actually show you the damage you're actually doing. And that's the whole reasoning for me coming down to the firing range and showing you, right? Then of course we only have 9.5% all weapon damage, 37% SMG damage, 370, 884 armor, 446 armor regeneration, 75,113 max health, 43,190 health regen, 42% hazard protection, 42% blind, bleed, burn, disorient, disrupt, and shock. We have 949 skill power, 6% cooldown reductions, and then 949 for basically all the skills other than pulse at 1,091. But essentially, just like I said, I mean, if you could go with patience if you wanted to here. Also, for the mask, if you prefer filler up, then by all means you can put spotter on your mask. Then by all means you can utilize spotter, and so that way you get 20% weapon damage when to targets that are pulsed. And then, you know, once the pulse goes on cooldown, then you can just drop your chem launcher at your feet, and that'll proc on the ropes. So that way you get that additional 25% weapon damage. So basically, if you do use spotter, you get 20% when to pulse targets. But, you know, if they're not pulsed, then basically you don't get nothing. But still, soon after a few seconds later, then you can utilize it to proc on the ropes. But I went a different route, thus the whole self-adjusting on my knee pads and just that little bit, and of course the stacked on armor regen. I'm going with the repairer drone and of course a chem launcher, because I start out more or less with the repairing drone first, and then once it is broken, you know, shot out or disrupted or whatever the case may be, then I can more or less drop my chem launcher at my feet in order to proc on the ropes. And since it has a really long cooldown, then that on the ropes stays up a pretty long time, right? But it just depends on your playstyle and what your personal preference is. I mean, you don't have to use any one particular skill. If you wanted to use the likes of, say, Booster Hive, just to get that initial boost, weapon handling and speed, and then destroy it, as far as once you get the first the burst. Then also that can proc on the ropes. So the sky's the limit. It's just personal choice and preference. But this kind of correlates over to my playstyle, how I'm utilizing the chem launcher and the fixer drone. So that way I'm constantly, getting my armor repaired and in turn, dealing out damage. And since I do have such a high amount of armor with the self-adjusting and armor regeneration, it kind of comes in definitely handy. And of course, when I do deploy my drone initially for a few moments, I do get that protected deploy. So I get that burst of 37,000 additional armor for deploying that fixer drone. Then once it's destroyed, then constantly every time I drop a chem, when both skills are on cooldown, then that in turn procs on the ropes to get that 25% weapon damage. And then also every time I drop one, since I'm deploying a skill, then I also get that 37k boost in armor for that protected deploy. So it's a lot of components, but in the most part it synergizes really well. You just, with any build, you just have to have an idea, implement it, go test it, try it out, and then not more or less conform the build to your playstyle to an extent, but that's kind of in essence what you want to do. But in this case, utilizing certain talents, sometimes you have to adjust your playstyle so that way you can get the timing of those talents and those skills proccing and the synergy of those skills, and just do a little tweaking here and there to your playstyle to kind of conform to the best utilization of those skills. But yet you're still under your own personal preference in your playstyle. It's just sometimes you do have to tweak your player skill and your preference, and the things that you like to do in PvP or PvE, to reflect and get the best usage out of your skills. But anyways, enough of my rambling. I hope you guys enjoyed it. This is my interpretation and how I run an SMG.